Entering the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings 2022, the American Express. DraftKings picks and preview. Remember to smash the like button to the episode. Sub to Mayo Media Network in the comment section, please. Give me your 2 plays in the 6K region, because the 6K region may be very important in a week like this, especially with the 2 names at the very top of the board. Also, subscribe to the newsletter. There's tons of research in there, completely free. It's down in the description, as is the Pat Mayo Experience DraftKings Listeners League link. It's over half full already, 2,500 spots, $5,000 to first place, 3 max entry, no rake. You should really get on top of that. The quicker we fill it, the bigger it's going to be moving forward. And, well, I guess I can talk through it with my guest, Ryan Noonan, right now from 4for4, the betting content manager, that this still feels like the preseason for golf in a weird way. And Farmers next week feels like the season has actually started.
Yeah, it's such a tough start, right? Because we have no form to measure. In this place, of all places, is where course history is just really hard, because we have 3 courses. It's just such a mess. So of all places, we were joking earlier, it's in Coachella. I'd rather be at Coachella, blown out of my mind, than try to figure out what's going to happen at this event. It's just so hard to really point your thumb when you look at the guys who have won here so far down the board, really outside of that Rahm win a couple years ago. So this will be fun. Yeah,
not only were they deep odds type guys, they're all completely different styles of players.
Totally. Yeah, it's really hard. It's not like a style guy. It's not like a Bombers. It's not, hot putter, right? You're going to have to get into the 20s here for sure, especially now that La Quinta is back in the mix. So that was a couple of years ago, by far the easiest track on the tour. So yeah, that's that would make it even easier, right? If we kind of could pigeonhole. I thought you kind of found something in your research show the other day, looking at the Valero, because I think there might be some POA overseeding stuff there. Because when you look at the leaderboards, there are some parallels, and I guess we'll get into that, to some of the other Pete Dye tracks. And that's really all we can do here, right? Because we get ideally 2 stadium rounds. That's a Pete Dye track. There are definitely some corollary courses that work there. So those will kind of be some of the ways we can try to pinpoint some of our guys this week.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with Valero. It could just be as simple as these 2, they're both on the bottom rung in terms of tournaments, in terms of field strength every single season, that just the same guys play there. So your mid-range guy, generally, your Chris Kirks of the world or Cameron Tringale's of the world, they're going to look pretty good in fields like the Valero and the American Express versus a regular tournament. That's all it could be.
Yeah, because the rest of the dudes that matter don't show up to those events. And yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's noise, but that's, this week we're just grasping at straws. So when I'm looking at some of those things, when I pop open the last few Valero leaderboards, I'm like, well, maybe there's something here. And there's some dudes that maybe make sense at the Pete Dye tracks too. And, maybe there's enough there. There's some there. We're going to find out.
Yeah, I mean, even if there's nothing there, we're probably going to go with it anyway, because this is one of the, every week in golf is completely random. This week, you might as well just start picking names from a hat at the bottom. Maybe there's some sort of signal to point you to someone, but as we mentioned, there's no specific prototype of player that you can really point to, oh no, you want this style of guy. At least last week, if you did the research, not that I had any Hideki or Henley, because I'm an idiot and they were 2 of my fades, but all of the numbers pointed to those guys having really good weeks. I'm just a moron.
Well, that's what I like about this. Is my, first opportunity here on the Pat Mayo Experience, and I get one of the most volatile events. So if I happen to do well, that's going to work out really well. And if I don't, Pat, then I could just be like, well, yeah, you brought me on for the worst events. So that's on you. Let's do it again.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that you're guaranteed a second spot now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, makes sense to me. So let's talk about the courses. You kind of hit on it. It's a 3-course rotation. So everyone in the field is going to get 54 holes of play. Each of them play with their Pro-Am partner each of the first 3 days at La Quinta, Nicholas course, and the Stadium course, which is the host course. Then there's a cut after 3 rounds, and the top 65 and ties move on to the final round, which is all at the Stadium course. Now, if you're looking back through history and the course history for shot link data, well, you're only going to find Stadium course type numbers, and that's the Pete Dye track. The other 2 are not. One's obviously the Nicholas course, shockingly enough, designed by Jack Nicklaus, I think. I mean, I'm just making that assumption. I don't want to completely be, maybe it's designed by his son or something like that. I'm guessing it's not. It's a Jack Nicklaus type venue. And then look into, as you mentioned, the last time we saw it, it was the easiest course on the PGA Tour. Last year, because of COVID restrictions, they did not have the Pro-Am tournament, so they cut La Quinta from the mix. And I actually thought the tournament was entirely more watchable. It was great because you got 3 rounds at the stadium course, and all of a sudden, Pete Dye specialist Si Woo, bloop, pops right to the top of the list. Now you take away one of those runs. I don't think that he made a bogey at the stadium course last year, which is pretty insane because there's a lot of weird hazards. Very easy course, but you can find trouble, or at the other two, it's really difficult to find trouble. So that's what I wanted to throw out to you, is that very few books will be offering first round leader bets this week. And I always like to dabble and lose all my money on first round leader bets. But these are the type of events, like I don't play first round showdown very often, but at the multi-course events, I always do. And when I was going through the research, obviously you can probably win showdown stacking guys at any course you want because the potential to go really low is obviously there for them all. The stadium course is the most difficult, but it's not like it's super difficult. Like Cantley shot a 61 there to close it out last year with the more difficult pins. Like the pins last year were even more difficult because there was no amateur partners, and these guys were still able to obliterate it. The only key that I would have is at La Quinta is that all 4 of the par 5s are reachable in 2, and you can make eagles. And like that little edge is like good enough for me to completely stack La Quinta. And then some people will say, Ryan, that everyone knows that. But here's the thing. Everyone doesn't know that because these are the only times I'm ever successful playing round 1 showdown is stacking the easy course, and people just don't do it.
People think that in real all DFS, right? It's like the cash games are solved, and then you have those weeks where it seems so obvious, and then you turn things over when the first game start, in football in particular, and you're like, well, how did they come to that? Or how did you not play this guy? So yeah, I mean, to your point, you can get away with doing it at all 3 courses, but I do think that it is smart to at least go overweight on the La Quinta stacks in showdown because you want to prove that your opponents know what they're doing. So I think waves in general here, if you're, mass entering tournaments, even into say 12, 10 lineups, I think just waves here in case a certain course, weather waves, we all know obviously AM, PM, but course waves here, I think are going to be really advantageous too. Again, we're trying to look for any edge we can when we're bringing in extra variables on top of the most, high variant sports that there possibly is. We're adding all these other layers here with a 3 course rotation. So kind of finding ways where if something happens to work out, you are dialed in and you're going to be able to take advantage of it. So yeah, AM, PM, course waves, and then make them prove it on the La Quinta side.
So do you think that you will be constructing lineups like, hey, here's my La Quinta team, here's my Nicklaus team, here is my stadium course team of guys starting in round 1 for the entire tournament, not just showdown? Because I've had more success with that strategy at Pebble Beach than I have here.
Yeah.
Here, I find it really doesn't make that big of a difference. Although I could just be playing the wrong guys. Who knows? At Pebble, at least, if you get bad weather at Pebble Beach becomes super difficult that day. And if you can just avoid that, it's fantastic because like Spyglass would be protected by the trees. It doesn't have the same sort of wind impact. It's a bit more difficult. Like Pebble Beach is a super easy course unless the weather comes up. Then it's really hard. Whereas the other two aren't in that tournament. Where at this one, the same weather is basically going to impact everything. And none of them are really going to play that difficult.
I find it always advantageous to play the best guys. And, I'm actually really good at that come Sunday nights where I'm like, oh yeah, that made a ton of sense. Like your point, like Hideki, why didn't I have any Hideki? Like he was just a glaring bright buy. You know what? I don't play like, mass multi-entry. I'll do 6 lineups here and I will do exactly that. I'll do 3 lineups, my main 3, and then I'll do 1 for each just because I feel good about it. And I feel like I did what I thought was the right process. Now, again, come Sunday night, come Monday morning, did I pick the right guys? We'll find out. But I think that is definitely a way to kind of spread your pool depending on if you are, 150 plus. If you are maybe a 3 entry person, I don't think I'd mess around with it if I was only doing 3. But I feel like I want to at least check that box and feel like I'm attacking that in case there is an advantage to have in all the courses.
This year I've changed up my strategy a little bit. I'm playing like 30 lineups a week in mass multi-entry and so the allocation for me will probably be like 5, 5, and 5, and then 15 of whatever, and see how that ends up working out. I tinkered around a little bit with the 150 max last year in the 50 cent tournament. It's like, I don't want to test out my strategy in the $15 where it's costing me thousands and thousands per week. I'd rather test it out in the 50 cents to see if I have anything here. And like the first week I did it, I think I came like in second, third, and fifth. I was like, oh, I'm great at this. And I lost like all my money the next week trying the exact same thing. So I'm going to stick with
Much rather lose thousands of dollars betting first round leaders, right?
Oh, 100%. Those are always, you can probably find like individual course first round leaders here. Just those don't really appeal to me all that much.
Yeah, it's not a market that I dabble in. My guy, Ron at PGA Splits 101 is working on a first round leader model. There could be arguments that it's pretty noisy, but we're testing it out a little bit before we, start to turn that loose. But it's not a market that I like to get in. I want to have as many options as I can. That's why I like bigger slates. I like, full field events more so than Showdown even. But again, this is a good Showdown week for the exact reasons you talked about earlier.
Well, I do have a first round leader model. I've been working on it for like 3 or 4 years now, and I always just forget to consult it every time that I try to go make my first round leader bets. I'm like, oh no, that guy sounds like he'll make birdies. I'll take him. He's 200 to 1. If people are curious, this week, John Rahm is number 1 in the first round leader model. Basically everything that I've run so far this week, John Rahm is just inching near the top. Yeah, the best plays, top 10 in the first round leader model, which just really focuses, there's no putting in it, but it just focuses on birdie opportunities, eagle opportunities, that kind of thing. It's Rahm, Gooch, Henley, Hoagie, Patrick Cantley, Ramey, List, Varner, Duffner, and Corey Connors. Those would be the top 10. I have run far too many numbers this week. This is why modeling is probably pretty stupid, because it keeps telling me to play Chez Reavie, and I don't feel like I want to do that.
Well, again, this week is one of those weeks where, I don't know that I would cross many names off for a lot of reasons. I mean, you could play Chez Reavie. He typically, what do we have? An early January model here. What do I have? Strokes gained January over the last 5 years. And Chez Reavie is like 10th. So
yeah, well, he won in Phoenix. Of course he is. Like if you pop one, and I mean, what are we looking at the past 5 years for? Like that would tell me like Seamus Power probably sucks. Although I know that Seamus Power is like good now, and he was not good 5 years ago. Like I bet you Jason Day is awesome in that model. But here's a fun fact: Jason Day reeks.
Jason Day is 3rd in the model. Yeah. So yeah, he's and shocker, Chuck 3 Sticks is great in the model too. Might have something to do with how he just owns the Sony Open. So yeah, I mean, some of these things when you try to get super granular to get some sort of predictability from it, yeah, they become super noisy. They become stacked with one event. A win can highlight things. Yeah. So this is why we do this, because we like pain and we like misery, and we pick the most difficult sport to try to handicap.
Well, especially when you look at Day, I think in that last 5-year time range, he won Pebble and he won at Farmers, so that would really boost him up. And he plays Pebble well every single year. There is something. I don't know if there is something to it, but it's really funny is that Jason Day is one of the slower players on the PGA Tour. He is playing this week, by the way, in a tournament he never plays in. But pro-ams are really good for him because they're like 7-hour rounds anyway, and that's like his preferred pace of play.
He's been so bad of late. It's remarkable. You look at some of the projections and how he's just dove off. It's painful to see. And I know, again, if he is popping in your models this week, like we're talking about right now, you're too far out. You need to kind of hone in and look, a little bit more recent, because he has been really rough.
Yeah, you might want to click off the January model and click on the play the good plays type of model.
Yeah,
and he probably won't appear in that one. But maybe, hey, listen, people will talk themselves. I think that, put it this way, if I was to have any investment in Jason Day this week, I'd probably just bet him at like 140 to 1 or something stupid like that. So he can't hurt my DraftKings line, because people will tell you this week, because everyone is guaranteed 54 rounds. And I'm sure I've made this case in the past. And the more I've seen it play out over the course of like the past 8 years on DraftKings, or 6 years, or whatever it's been, is that you want all your guys to make the cut. Put it that way, especially at 3 easy courses.
Yeah, you need all those birdies here. You need to get a bunch of guys in the high teens. You don't necessarily need the winner at a place like this, where I think a lot of guys can go low, but you sure as hell better have 6 of 6 through. And I'll let Jason Day be someone else's, bell of the ball this week. I think betting market would be the way to go if you, for some reason, had an inkling that there was a glimmer of hope here, but definitely not in the DraftKings lineup.
The bigger thing too is like you can get away with not having the winner here and potentially winning a GPP, but you would need Adam Long to win again. Like you need the guy that no one has to win, and then it's fine with the rest of your lineup. Because that happened to me the Ted Potter year at Pebble Beach. Like people won GPPs without having Ted Potter because legit no one had Ted Potter.
No one had Ted Potter. Yeah.
And all the good
run that
guys.
was.
And I think all the guys came, like the good guys tied for second that year. It was like Phil, DJ, Day, and there was like someone else. They all tied for second. Like you had those guys that you were fine. Anyway, let's talk about the picks for this week. $10,000 range on DraftKings. There's 4 guys. Ramen Cantlay way above the rest. And you got Scheffler and Tony Finau. Tony Finau, very Andercursed coming into the week, by the way. He's Tim's one and done pick.
Uh-oh.
I looked at it. Ramen Cantlay. How viable is it, do you think, just to start your lineups with those 2 guys? Because it leaves you with $7,000 per player afterwards.
Man, we were talking again before, like I think under 7 is probably a key spot this week, and again, talking about all the variables at this event and all the dudes that have won here before, when you look at the winner's circle outside of the Rahm win, it's just, Andy Landys of the world. And it's just not a great spot for them. So yeah, you would have to hit on some of those guys. They need to win. They definitely probably both need the top 5. And they are obviously, the cream of the crop here. We mentioned earlier, Cantlay ran hot here on the stadium last season with a 61. And we saw towards the tail end of last year when that putter gets hot, he is unbelievable. He is just an absolute beast. The Rahm question is one we're going to have to answer basically every week, especially in spots like this where he is so far above the rest of the field. Do we just swallow it from an ownership standpoint and go elsewhere and try to diversify, get cute with some of the other names, cross off the next 5-6 guys from a projected ownership standpoint, jam in Rahm and go from there? I don't know that I'm going to jam in Rahm and Cantlay in the way that I build, because I don't build that many lineups, but I imagine if you're building 30, you try to do it at least once or twice. I'd rather get kind of into the middle. I think there's a bunch of guys in the 7Ks. So again, I'm crossing some of those guys off because I really need to, build the majority of my guys under that 7 threshold moving forward.
Well, if you went Ramen Cantlay, let's say you went Ramen Cantlay to start your lineup. You have $69.50 left for everyone else. And then you have a Pat Mayo favorite in your lineup. You play Trey Mullinix at $6,300. Now you have 72. And you can start piecing it together a little bit if you take another high 6s guy that you can access the mid 7s if you really wanted to. But Molinari, $7,000, Streelman, $7,400. There's enough at least name recognition guys that you could piece together that lineup. I think in a week like this, with as you kind of pointed out, how random this tournament can be from the bottom end, where we've seen a lot of these long shot guys end up competing, that I don't think it's I could see myself building 30 Ramen Cantlay lineups. Why not?
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on how you feel about, some of the guys in the 9s in high 8 range. The high 8 range is basically best of 2017 range. So there are some guys that are a little bit dicey in that range. So I guess that kind of depends. I think the 9s are appealing, but yeah, I mean, like you said, they are by far the best 2 players here. We haven't seen, the next 2 with Scotty and Finau. Finau's Andercursed. And then, classic Tony last week, 65 out of contention to get himself a T4. We haven't seen Scotty this season, though he is a big time birdie maker. Did not do well last year at the stadium course. But again, this is kind of a place that we want Scotty in spots where we're going to get into the 20s. So I get it. I get why you would try to jam it in to make it work. I hadn't thought of it, but now I'm going to have to try to play around with it to see if I can get some things that don't make me absolutely hold my nose.
Yeah, if you decide to fade Ramen Cantlay, then you really can have any lineup you want, because I'm thinking right now, I'm looking at the early projected ownership from Fantasy National, and you can get access to that, stats, tools, everything, fantasynational.com/Mayo, 20% off, by the way. But they could both of them could be around 25, 30%, couldn't they?
They probably should, like we said, in the spot where the rest of it is kind of dicey. We want to try to get the winner, knowing that these are spots where, again, 61 for Cantlay on Sunday last year, and the putters continue to be hot. He played really well in Hawaii. So yeah, I mean, the more you're talking about it, the more you are making a lot of sense. Again, now you're eating at all that ownership. And this is a spot more than anyone that I want to be cognizant of ownership. And I'm willing to eat it at the top of the board, especially with at least one of them. I'm going to eat it with 2. Then again, I'm going to have to really diversify and take some guys that no one's on in the low to mid 7 range and some of those 6ers, because again, you're naturally buying into probably 60% cumulative ownership with your top 2 guys That's pretty hard to stomach on a spot that's so volatile like this.
It is, but with the way that you would have to construct the rest of your team, you're not getting any more double-digit ownership guys into your lineup unless you take like the chalk $6,000 guy, which I don't even know who that would be. As of right now, I'm not seeing anyone really pop up. Swafford at 67 seems to be the most popular. Svensson at $7,000 are the two that are kind of popping up right now. Dylon, woo! Could be all right. $6,900. Had a nice week at Sony, but like as long as you just avoid those guys, no one's going to have the same team as you.
Yeah, and that's what it's got to be. You have to make sure you have pretty good dial in on that ownership. Brandon Hagee's down at 6,200. If they become popular, because those guys might naturally start to, in a projected ownership, whoever you're using for your projected ownership, it might not be really popular. You might not see some of these guys populating at high numbers, but because people might try to jam in these two at the top, we might be off on some of those projected ownerships just because your natural bills are going to force you down the board a little bit more. And those guys start to get steamed a little bit more than they're projected to.
I would guess people don't have the guts to go with both of them. They don't like how the rest of their line of the final four spots in their roster. They're just not going to like that because it's so much easier to go Rom, answer, or Cantlay, answer, and then fill your team out with that like middle tier of Glover and the Gim Reaper, Emiliano Grillo, Troy Merritt, Patton Kazire, like that type of guy versus Cantlay and Rom and Kurt Kitayama, Austin Cook, Austin Smotherman. Like no one wants that.
No one wants that. But this is one of those weeks where I do think, especially in GPPs, it is going to be a week where if you like it, you probably did something wrong because you don't want to flip over ownership that you're just right into the rest of the fields. Because again, we're so high variant. Again, we talk about this all the time in golf. We want to be cognizant of all these things in GPPs, but like this place, just look at what happens here. It is the most wild place of winners. Again, we're bringing in the amateurs, slow rounds. We're bringing 3 courses. You just don't want to be building into ownership. But again, you're making a case for the 2 guys that are by far the class of the field here, considering that the other guys that are just a little bit below them are either a little bit overpriced compared to what we see them at typically, or maybe you have some question marks. We haven't seen them this year yet, some of those things. So yeah, I mean, Rom is just, I feel like you just eat the chalk with Rom no matter what, because he can really be in an off week and perform really well here, and you're okay because he's still going to score.
$9,000 range. It kicks off right after Finau with Sungjae at 9.9, coming off a very Anderhurst week for him. The Gooch, Power, Connors, Wolf, Answer, Zalatoris, and Henley. Of the two guys above $9,000, I think that might come in with the lowest ownership, weirdly, are Finau and Zalatoris.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen Willie Z since November. He was spraying it off the tee last time we saw him. Is he a guy that we want when we're like going into the mid-20s?
Yeah, I think that we do.
You think so? Okay. Yeah, so that's the thing is, I mean, I think that he is, we all think the pedigree's there for him to be, in this upper tier class. We just haven't seen him in those spots. He's performed so far fairly well on some difficult tracks, perform well in majors. So can the putter get hot? I mean, that's really what we need from anyone this week. That's a question that if we can answer, we would be doing something probably differently for a living. But yeah, I mean, again, no one's going to own him. So I think you're totally right. We haven't seen him, and it wasn't great towards the tail end of the last year. Not a great swing season or anything like that. So yeah, no one's going to be on Willie Z.
I thought it was interesting that more people would be on Wolf than Zalatoris, considering, well, like, and especially with Finau, right now projected to come in way below anyone. If you told someone a year ago that Finau and Zalatoris would be the 2 least popular of this bunch, you'd be like, no, they're the most popular of this bunch. Have they passed that point now where everyone used them? They were so popular for so long that people just want to move on and try something new?
Well, we all wanted to catch the Tony win, and once we finally crossed that off the list a little bit, we feel good about that one, chasing that dragon for, a solid 4 years. I don't know. I think Tony will carry a little bit of ownership. I guess it depends on, the Seamus Power thing is wild. Like, what did we do with the Power Gooch M market? I think that impacts Finau a little bit. So maybe it is a spot where people are looking to get a little bit of savings. Power has been just really good. I can't believe we're paying $9,500 for him at this point, but at the end of the day, like, I have to divorce myself from, $7K Seamus Power because he's been really good for like multiple stretches. He did this like midsummer last year. and then kind of got back to normal, was playing okay. And now he's on like another heater, and he's always been a birdie maker. He just could never really piece the entire thing together. But like, he's good from out of the rough with birdies. He's top 6 in birdie weight on the season last year. Just kind of an unreal run of top 20. So again, in a spot here where we need birdies, we know we can go low. The form's great. Like, I don't know. I'm interested in $9,500 Seamus Power, and I'm interested in Wolf too. Like, I want to be in on this kid coming back. California kid, familiar with the area. It's not like he grew up like 200 miles away. So it's not like we're playing a home game or anything like that. I love how we'll probably hear that on the broadcast at some point on the stadium course. Cause of course we don't have cameras at the other two, because why would we? This is it's only $1 billion industry. We can't possibly have cameras to watch Aunt Viv and Carlton Banks play golf. But yeah, I mean, sneaky birdie maker obviously had a nice swing season. I just want to be buying on Wolf, and 9,300 might be a little rich, especially if it's into ownership as we kind of get closer to tee time, but I'm interested in Wolf big time.
So the highest owned of this bunch, it looks like Gooch and Power are going to lead the way along with Answer. My two favorites from the nines are Im and Answer, actually. I think it's a nice buy spot on Sung Jae. I'm still flirting with the idea of betting him outright this week at DraftKings Sportsbook. Currently, he is 18-1, although I've seen that number drift down to 25-1 in some other spots. 25, I like a whole lot more than 18, obviously, but I think that's a fair price for him. And once you drop him back into the zone where he's where he's closer to Gooch and Power than he is than Cantlay and Rahm, where we've seen him kind of linger for the past year and a half or so. I think I thought that last week would be a good course for him, but obviously he was Anderker, so I had to completely jump off the M train. I think a lot of people got burned. Sometimes we see that festers the following week, that no one wants to go to him, but I just think that so many people want to use Cantlay and Rahm. And if they don't use them together, that Im is probably still a bit too expensive for a lot of people, that they would try to get the savings with Gooch or Power, or especially Abraham Answer here. It's Im and Answer for me. Those are the two that I really like, although I think you can make a really compelling case for any of these guys in the nines. Would you have the guts to fade the 10K range and just basically make a core 4 of guys in the nines and construct all your lineups around those guys?
I think I'll try it at least once. What are your thoughts around Answer's ownership? Because we kind of have the interesting, play both Sony or both Hawaii events, didn't play particularly well, but his course history here is incredible. Back-to-back, T5s, obviously accurate off the tee. He can go low. Do you think that he carries any ownership?
Yeah, I do. I think that by the end of the week, he could be the highest owned of these 9K guys. I do think that Gooch or Power coming off the really good week, I think is going to propel him up a little bit. Although it seems to be, I don't want to say a discount price on Answer, but I don't know, is anyone going to use Henley?
What do we do with Russell Henley? He's been hitting bombs, Pat. Have you seen this?
No.
He was 127th on tour last season in driving distance. He is 7th so far, and it's up like over 20 yards. I know it's super noisy.
Yeah,
it's noisy. It's a small sample, but like, it's weird though. Like, it's a pretty substantial jump. So I don't know. Do you think it's course specific? But this is a dude that's like in the low 290s, and now he's hitting like 317 off the tee for a couple events in a row. I don't know. It could be noisy. It's definitely something I'm going to watch, because it caught me off guard when I was looking at it today. I'm like, what the hell's going on with Russell Henley? I don't know.
It's difficult to say. Is Sony at elevation at all? I don't think
it's a good question. I don't know. It's a good question.
Because I'm just looking at the quote unquote, like where they be drawing the metrics from so far this season to kind of prove that out. Like he played 2 events in Vegas, both at elevation. Sony typically has a shorter driving distance, but I think it would allow for him to go balls out if he wanted to, because he doesn't quite have all that in terms of distance. He played Mayakoba. Houston's a really long course that's very driver friendly. Like the Summit course, when they played, like you can spray it wherever you want at that course. Hit it as far as you can. That's why you saw all the bombers do really well. Oh, maybe you're right. Maybe like the club head speed is up. I don't know. I haven't really dug into it all that much, but I think you could kind of reverse engineer where some of this distance is coming from. But if he has made a leap in that area, it was less about that. Like, I think statistically he rates out really well. Has basically never played well at this tournament in his career, coming off what's pretty devastating in terms of losses. I mean, Jeff and I called it a choke job on Monday's show, and then a lot of people were like, well, how could it be a choke job? Like, he shot, what did he shoot, like 65 or 64 on Sunday? It's like, yeah, but he also gagged a 5-stroke lead on the back 9 at the same time. Like, he played really well on the front, and he played about as bad as you could play at Waialae on the back.
Yeah. It won't have. He won't be owned at all this week. I think people will at least think that he's a little bit mentally off after last week. That is tough. Like Decky just played great. I mean, just hit an incredible shot in the playoff. Like, what are you going to do? He played really well. But again, like this happened last year with Henley, where he was just cinched to win, and he kicked the can down the road on Sunday. So yeah, there's something to it there. I don't think he'll be owned at all because I think there's some of those guys just a little bit above him. Like you said, Answer. I think it's just so much easier to spend the 200 to get to Answer, knowing that he fits his course better. The history here is just phenomenal, and you're not really giving up too much. And then a couple guys just below him, I think, are going to be carrying some ownership too.
See, I don't think so. And because we didn't even discuss Corey Connors. I think that Connors is going to carry ownership. Wolf is going to carry ownership. Like all these 9K guys, I don't think it's going to be like flat. There's going to be peaks and valleys in terms of how much interest people have, but they'll all basically be in the double digits, I would think. Maybe Zalatoris is like 8%, and Henley is like, I think enough people will still use Henley based on, like if you run any sort of statistical model, he'll be top 5 and he'll be a value, like points per dollar based on any sort of optimizer that you look at, just based on the numbers that he's put up. And you can't really disagree with that, but you can have your hunch like, yeah, never really played well here, coming off a pretty devastating week. Maybe you don't want to go down that road. Who knows? But do you have interest in Connors? Because this feels like, he's going to hit all the fairways. He's basically Abe Answer who can't putt.
Yeah, Connors pops in your Valero model. He is also has a nice little track record at P-Dye courses. I think there were some, he went full Corey Connors last week, but I think there were some improvements. He's still not a good putter, but I think we saw some strides last year for him being closer, at least more consistently, to somewhat of a just below field average putter than like this just terrible abomination of a putter, a Luke List, if you will. My apologies. But Corey Connors is just a ball striking god at times and can run hot. And if he does, and the putter is even somewhat field average, yeah, we absolutely need some Corey Connors.
Sungjae, Answer, Connors, those 3. If I fade the 10Ks in lineups, that might be. Although, let's drop to the 8s, because you mentioned that there's going to be like higher owned guys here. I don't see it. I think that almost everyone in the $8,000 area is going to be single digits, just based on the way that lineup construction works. That if you take Rahm or Cantlay, you're probably still going to take Answer or Connors or whoever in the 9s. Then you just simply cannot afford anyone in the $8,000 range. Or if you try to triple up on the 9,000s or go like Finau, someone, then you're into the 7s anyway. So you're going to have Tringali, Reed, Bezadenhout, Rose, Ricky, Siwoo, who's the defending champ, Carlos Ortiz, Alex Noren. These guys are going to be like 3 to 8%. Bezadenhout's the only one who might be able to breach double digits. I bet on Seabez to win. I really like him this week. I'm gonna play him at $8,700, but like, I don't normally play Cameron Tringali, and he is overvalued, but I could see myself playing him this week.
The only guy I really was referring to is Seabez, because again, he's close to that. And I do think some of the other guys, like I said, it is kind of, a 2017 all-star group, and, there's not a lot of form there. I don't think they're going to be very popular, but Seabez, I think, will be a spot where, if you're looking to prevent yourself from going down to, say, the 6,300 range, and you'd rather have a guy up in the upper 6s where you can kind of make that delineation and say, okay, can I go down to Seabez instead of Willie Z or Answer? I think you start to see a lot of ownership because a lot of the guys around him in the 8K range are kind of a mess. But Seabez does get into that, like, mid-teens for sure. But yeah, the rest of them are really tough to swallow. Is there anyone outside of Tringali that you even kind of consider? Because some of these guys are just, it's dicey, man.
I'll play Siwoo, of course.
Okay,
it's Pete Dye. Play Siwoo. Just anytime Pete Dye shows up, play Siwoo. It might not always work, but it could work severely into your favor. I like Carlos Ortiz, despite the fact that we haven't seen him since Mayakoba. He was second there, though, and his irons really heated up during the swing season. Hopefully it doesn't take him too much to get off the schneid of the layoff, and he can be pretty good here. Maybe he's resolved some of his putting issues that was never an issue, then became a real problem. It seemed like he started to figure that out towards the end of the year, too. And like the other one that I was looking at Ricky. $8,500. Like I've never been on this like, hey, buy low on Ricky. I could see him having it figured out at this point. And even last year, like when he was an abject failure and a disaster until random spike weeks, he's played this tournament pretty well the last 2 years. 21st last year, 10th the year before that. I don't know, maybe it's just We saw this with Spieth too. Like even when Spieth was bad, there would be the courses where he always kind of played well and showed up and continued to play. Not like elite winning, but good enough to be of value. I think that Ricky could be that this week.
Decent desert golf in his past. I'm going to use Jeff's favorite social media follow. I think that there's a little bit of interest here. Justin Rose. So first start of the year, obviously not great. The irons were a little bit better towards the tail end of the year. You know, decent showing on the Euro at the BMW, 12th at the RSM, a few solid outings at the swing season. You know, if I'm going to kind of get into this range of the Patrick Reed, Justin Rose, Ricky, I think Rose would be the guy that I want to go, but I don't know. I kind of want to find out a little bit more if there's anything going on, you know, between the ears here sometimes. Maybe, you know, find him on Instagram, see what he's been up to. And yeah, I don't know. I like seeing the irons because they were kind of a mess late when he was bad, you know, early in the season, but they were decent around the swing season.
Are we just overlooking Patrick Reed for no reason? I mean, we know the reasons to overlook Patrick Reed. He's won here before, and he's kind of like Si Woo. Like, are you a person who plays Patrick Reed blindly every week or doesn't?
That's the thing. Like he's the anti Russell Henley in a way. Every time you run anything statistically, like from a ball striking standpoint, strokes gained approach, all these things that we know tend to be stickier than other things. Russell Henley is a guy that always pops. Like a guy like previous iterations of Cam Smith and Patrick Reed, like they never really popped. Like he's not great statistically on approach. He could sometimes spray it off the tee. What he does is wizardry on and around the green, and that tends to be something that is fairly noisy and not something that tends to matter significantly here. So Patrick Reed is a fade to me. Again, Patrick Reed's not going to pop when I run anything for the Farmers either, and he won that last year. So he's just kind of a guy that you sometimes have to play him a little bit when you feel like he's going to be maybe 5% owned because he does have win equity anywhere because he's Patrick Reed. But I kind of want to see a little bit, again, over the last 12 months, 54th in strokes gained approach, like 95th off the tee. It's just not very good.
And the driver's getting progressively worse. Like I think he's lost in like 9 consecutive tournaments off the tee. I think that I'm just going to deploy Patrick Reed because he's going to be low owned every week because he's Patrick Reed. Nothing optimal will ever point towards him. Just use him at hard courses. Like even when you go back and take a gander at his 2021, where did he play well? Places that we would consider long, hard courses, which seems to be the antithesis of what you would want from Patrick Reed. 1 at Torrey, 9th at the Concession. Was it the Concession? Is that what it was called?
It was a concession.
Yeah, like
that 1 year. Yeah,
that was a really hard course. He came 9th there.
Yeah.
He was 8th at the Masters, 6th at Quail Hollow, 17th at the PGA Championship, 5th at Memorial, top 20 at the U.S. Open. Like those are all hard courses, and that's where he played well. Everywhere else, he kind of sucked.
Yeah, and it's been like I said, you know, those references are 12 months, so like we're looking at a fairly large sample size of him being terrible and progressively more so off the tee, like you pointed out.
Luke List, $8,000.
Dude, is there anyone more relatable than Luke List? Like he just cannot putt. Like sometimes I'll feel good getting out there, stripe it off the tee, maybe, plop it on the green a little bit. And then, if I can get off in 3, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. But like he's 7th in the field. And we're not talking about a farmer's field. We're not talking about the players, but this is a decent field. 7th in this field in strokes gained tee to green over the last 12 months. That's incredible. He's just that bad putting. I think you have to, because again, this is similar to like we were talking about a little bit earlier with the Corey Connors. If there's even something somewhat close to field average, he's so good tee to green that you have to have a little bit of Luke List because the upside is tremendous.
It is. If you could just somehow export Luke List around the green game onto Corey Connors, now we're talking about a major contender because Connors is like bad at putting, but he's not Luke List bad. Connors gained strokes putting last week. It wasn't much, but he was a disaster in the first round. Then he kind of got it together a little bit. Like looking back at what Luke List has done, like there's a lot of like -4.5, -7, -6 on his resume, and like they're not like terrible results either. Like he lost 2.3 strokes putting at the Barbasol, came in 5th. He gained 0.1 at the John Deere, came in 4th. 11th in Houston, lost almost 6 strokes putting. I remember because I bet him. But his around the green game is really good. Like when you mentioned tee to green, that's where a lot of these bad putters, they're also really bad around the greens, so they can't help themselves whatsoever. But Luke List doesn't miss a ton of greens in regulation, but when he does, like it's not the end of the world for him. He can get it up and down, no problem. Like when he was on his hot run 2018, that's what he was so good at doing, and he was churning out these top 10s. When the around the green game went away, and you can kind of just see it in the numbers, just a lot of red on his screen for like an extended period of time in 2020 coming out of COVID. I mean, I guess he wasn't practicing his chipping at all. Like, he was a disaster. Like, he almost lost, I think he did lose his tour card, had to go win on the Corn Ferry Tour to end up coming back up. But now that that's back, like, the volatility is going to be so high with him. You know he's going to make a ton of birdies. It's just, he's ripped my heart out so many times that it makes me feel bad.
Man, I could feel that right there. You almost can you build a Corey Connors, Luke List, Johnny Vegas lineup, Pat, and just
you could
not watch golf? I
You
mean,
could.
because Vegas is in this mix too, right? Like, he can bomb it. The irons were really nice for a little run there. Gain on approach in 9 of 10. The time that he didn't, it was like negative 0.1 again. But the putting is so sporadic, and he can also hang some of these -4 strokes gained putting events where you're like, damn it, like, you are just crushing the ball tee to green, and you just can't make anything to save your life. So yeah, I mean, the volatility at a spot like this, you might just want to embrace it, because the upside for these guys, if they happen to all run hot, one of them, you can catch a winner. Like, they could all win this event. So I think Vegas is very much in that discussion, and again, right around a Luke List price. So not for everyone, but again, the upside is massive.
At least with Vegas, you see like the huge dips in the putting, but at least he putts well sometimes. When he putts well, it's like +4. Like
Connors.
Like Luke List's best putting week is like 0.2. It's not great.
It's not great. No. But the rest of it's so damn good, man. Like, you just want it for him so bad, because you have that level of skill set. And it's like, man, like, just, you know, he's out there just grinding, practicing. Like, you just can't see it. I don't know. It's going to happen for him a little bit. Again, we're dealing with a nice, strong stretch of him being so good that I feel like we want to continue to buy here towards the back end of it if it starts to tail off, because we're still in this terrific ball striking run. So yeah, Luke List is definitely part of builds for me this week.
All right, I'm going to put a tentative star next to his name on Fantasy National at $8,000, and I'll have to talk myself out of him as the week goes along, but that's probably just not going to happen for me. I'll talk myself more into him as Wednesday comes around, and then I'll wake up on Thursday morning. It's like, oh, West Coast time. Perfect. I have time to add more Luke List and just lose money. That's probably what's going to happen. 7Ks, I got Woodland, Glover, Chris Kirk. Those three. I like those three.
I like those three too. So I want to talk about the Gary Woodland thing, because I feel like I want it to happen. I think we all want it to happen, right? But like, is there anything statistically that makes you think it's going to happen outside of narratives around his health, that he's feeling better? Because we really haven't seen much, right? There was a T9 at the CJ Cup, and then 3 missed cuts on the swing season. So like, I love him. Like, I think he's one of the easiest guys to root for on tour. Seems like a good dude, but it hasn't been there. So is there anything that you have that's non-narrative driven that you feel is like, hey, we need to get on Gary Woodland? Because I bet him, but I don't know if I want him in DraftKings.
I even saw I bet him again at 110 to 1 with an each way now.
Yeah.
He debuted here last year and was pretty good. He was T16. Him and Molinari both played this tournament pretty well in their first appearances. It was the first time he had played it since 2014. He has a good record here. 16th, 38th, miscut, second in his career. Now that spans the last decade. Always hits his irons well here. And I think a lot of it is just like you're making a bet on being early on Gary Woodland, that he's okay. The labrum in his hip is fine now. He's been practicing. I saw some Instagram videos. That's always good enough for me. And when we think about these guys, like out of all the guys who are severely underpriced based on what their historical value is, be it Fowler, Rose, Day, Woodland, Molinari, there's probably other guys you could throw into those mix, but I think those are the big 5 that are currently in this field. Like, which one do you feel the best about returning to being a top 25 player? I think for me, it's Woodland, because it was all injury based for him, not like getting old based.
Yeah, and that's the difference with like, the Rose stuff and the Day stuff too. So yeah, I mean, you're right. A part of it maybe is I just feel like I bet him and I'm already exposed, because I definitely want it to happen. I was encouraged seeing the T9 at the CJ Cup, and like finally we're here. You could tell like he was like emotional even talking about how he felt in comparison to how he had felt over the last few months. So like definitely pulling for the guy. But there's actually some interesting names there too. I'm with you on Chris Kirk. I mean, Chris Kirk likes die tracks. Plays well in San Antonio as well. Is pretty cheap, can run hot with the putter at times. No glove, no love this week. I think he's going to start to get pretty popular. You're touting him up again, top 5 last week. He was incredible on approach, which we almost exclusively on approach is where he gained last week. So mixed bag at P Dies, but again, nice track record at Valero. So again, could be something there. Michael Thompson is a guy that is popping for me. Top 5 last week as well. Again, almost exclusively on approach. T5 tier last year. Tremendous record at Dies. If you look at every year for like the last 3-4 years, he's got at least one, sometimes 2 top 10s at Pete Die track. So again, that could be field based, something that definitely suits his eye, but 7,500 for Michael Thompson. He's definitely interesting to me as well.
Yeah. Top 5s at this tournament the past 2 of the past 3 years as well. I can never really get on Michael Thompson. It seems like he's got a lot of steam behind him this week too. Looking at the early projections, I have him projected higher than Lucas Glover.
Yeah, I think Glover and Thompson get some ownership too. So yeah, maybe that becomes the thing when we get closer to, like you said, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, because we'll have a little bit of time. We start to see these guys being into like the high teens, and it's like, gosh, I can't eat it here because there is so much volatility. A guy that won't be owned. I was gonna say,
sorry, go ahead. If I'm going to go with the I'm going to eat some chalk, it's going to be Romer Cantlay. It's not going to be Russell Knox or Michael Thompson.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say is Russell Knox. Like, is he going to be owned? Like decent last week. Yeah, decent showing here in the past. Lots of easy cross off.
I think Hadwin gets some love too, just based on how well he's played both desert golf at this course. People just want to believe, and I want to believe in that. I love Adam Hadwin. I wish he was really good again, but he has not been good in some time. He has these like 3-week mini runs where it looks like he's back, then he's just a disaster the following week.
Yeah, again, this was like he's the Charles Howell for this place where he just, no matter what, he just finishes nicely. Though what last year was just a T32. So maybe even the Adam Hadwin Open is come to an end. But yeah, he'll definitely carry ownership at course history. The course history bros will be all over his like top 5s he just ran train on T5s for like 5 years.
I think you can find some low, because those are the higher owned guys here. I think Glover's the only one I'm really going to bite on with extended ownership. I mentioned Reavie. Stats love Reavie. Pat doesn't love Reavie because Ches Reavie hurts Pat's feelings a lot. And I go down that road. I'll probably end up playing him because, I'm a glutton for punishment when it comes down to him. But the guys from like 75 and down feel like you can get some like good name value that no one wants. Like Doug Gim. I'll play Doug Gim. You probably shouldn't do that. But like Munoz is $7,500. Merritt is 73. Kazire is 73. Andrew Putnam is 71. Like I have stars next to all those guys. Everyone just wants to play Hayden Buckley. Like great. Hayden Buckley's good, obviously. And like he's trending well. He's playing a lot better, but I still think I'd rather have those guys at like a third of the ownership.
Munoz can be in that earlier discussion where he just runs so hot. He's so streaky. We haven't seen him. This is his first start, but last time out, solo third at the RSM. So like, again, I don't feel comfortable grabbing an event from the middle of November and telling you that he's in form.
Tell me he's in form. That's all I need to hear.
But like, again, to your point, if he's going to be 5% owned and everyone and their brother is going to be playing this dude that's run hot off the Corn Ferry for a couple of months, give me Munoz who can do it. We've seen him do it in like the Tour Championship events. Like he can get hot and just be, one of the best guys on tour for, a 3-week stretch of time. So let's bank on that RSM solo third, and we're going to roll it into a nice little Amex showing.
Andrew Landry.
I mean, so he just makes cuts here, but like he went like almost a full calendar year between top 20s. We had a November 2020 RSM, and then he waited till Sanderson's Farms here in the swing season to find another top 20. So yeah, I mean, it would be course history only because he just makes cuts here. But again, like what's the upside? If there's going to be any ownership here, again, because he won.
There's not though. No one believes in Andrew Landry.
Yeah, they shouldn't. But what about Taylor Moore? I think he might be a little bit sexy too. He's kind of in that. I feel like he's in that Hayden Buckley run a little bit.
Is he? I'm seeing somehow I'm seeing him 3 times as owned as Patton Kazire right now, which I thought was a bit odd.
Kazire's a dude.
Can you sell me on Taylor Moore?
I don't want to. I mean, decent swing season, I guess. After he got his card last year, dominated the Corn Ferry, top 8 at RSM. I don't love it, but I've heard him mentioned a few different times. I have a guy that I've talked to that is on him that thinks he's a really nice DraftKings play at his price because he can score. But again, if he's not going to be owned, maybe he's interesting. But if there's going to be any ownership, I thought there was going to be ownership. So if there's going to be none, maybe I'll take a longer look. But if he's going to be not owned, maybe we go there.
Yeah, I have him as like one of the higher owned guys of this like range, not quite as high as Buckley. I saw that Steele.
Okay.
I guess Steele burned just far too many people a week ago, and now no one wants to play him. He has a nice track record here too. He was god awful last week.
Awful last week. Yeah, but yeah, what 9 of 11 cuts here historically, 4 top 25s in the last 7 years. Yeah, this is what we have to deal with, Pat, at this place because we have really no form because we have such limited sample of events here. Some of these dudes haven't even played yet, so like we're really having to rely on course history, which isn't anything that I think we spend a ton of time in a typical summer event talking about course history a lot. But like again, we have to grasp at anything we have, and Brandon Steele has a little bit. So anytime you can play a 38-year-old guy who is not very good into ownership, I think you just got to do it.
I like Andrew Putnam a little bit. It seems like his spike putting weeks can come back. He didn't quite have one at Sony, but still managed a T27. He has that Valero crossover, so maybe time to jump back on Andrew Putnam after like a 2-year absence. Then there's 3 guys in a row who, I don't know, you can make a decent case for. Danny Lee, Aaron Rye, and Tom Hoagie. They all kind of do the same thing when they're playing well. Obviously, they're huge miscut risks, but who cares at this point when we're trying to gamble on these guys? Hoagie will probably draw the most of the ownership. I like Aaron Rye, though. I can't particularly tell you why I like Aaron Rye. He does hit every fairway, which is always really nice, and scoring from the fairway at this course is super easy.
Aaron Rye is like the European Luke List. He is really nice, sometimes immaculate tee to green, and then is sometimes just not an option with anything that you need from a putting standpoint. So yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I'll probably just stick with Putnam, and I will gamble on Molinari. I am such a slut for Molinari. It's incredible.
Oh yeah.
So that's why I'm going to play Molinari. Let's talk 6K guys though. If you want to do that, I mean, if you want to use 1 guy from down here, 4 guys from down here, if that's going to be the case with your Rom Cantlay builds, I can give you some guys. They're probably not good, but I can give you some names. I'm reading them off the sheet. You had told me before the show, like Hot Fire Dylan Fratelli is only $6,800. But the problem is, this isn't the Masters. This is the American Express.
Yeah, or the Open Championship, where this guy, maybe he just is hard tracks that we talked about with Patrick Reed, where he can compete in those, but in these spots, he's not a guy we want to look at. So like, it's just wild when you look at this guy's got 2 top 5s at majors and 6,800. And we're like, I don't know, like he should be, you would think, an auto play in this field with some of the names that are surrounding him here. But I don't know. We're going to play Dylon.
No, I'm not. I never get to him anyway.
Yeah. It's just not a guy that I typically play, and you see the top 5s of the majors, and you're like, what the hell is he even doing on the leaderboard? Like, this is the class of golf, and Dylon is contending on Sunday at majors. It's crazy.
So per my numbers, the best players in the 6K range over the past 24 rounds: Captain Ramius, Chad Ramey, CT Pan, the Panamaniac, he's down there. Hudson Swafford, who's going to be pretty popular, I think. He's won this tournament before. Duffner keeps popping up. I don't like that whatsoever. I need to shrink my sample size so it kicks Duffner off the list because he's been garbage. Your guy, Ryan Moore, who I refuse to play. Who else is down here? That's kind of it for everyone. The guys that I have stars next to: Hagatha Christie, he is $6,200. I like him at California courses, and he pops 3 times a year. Why not make it this week? I talked about David Olipsky on the research show. He's flashed a little bit of form, at least with the irons. He's $6,300. I just feel like he's a better player than a lot of these guys who are down here as well. Like Mullinix. I also like Trey Mullinix. He's like the even worse Luke List when it comes to putting, but he'll dominate the par 5s. Like if you're looking for like one single thing that guys do well, you have eagleable par 5s at all 3 of these courses. Trey Mullinix can get there, and he can make enough eagles because off the tee, par 5s, eagles gained. He's going to rate off the charts for that. And Herban Lahiri, $6,400. Another one who just crushes par 5s time after time, and you hope to luck into one of his 4 good putting weeks of the year.
Well, here's the guy that is interesting to me because, yeah, he does make birdies when he is going well, which is interesting. Also with 6,400 is Doc Redman. We were playing like $8,500 9K Doc Redman at times in the last year and a half or so. And now he's 6,400 at this event, and he just hasn't been good of late. But again, we have seen him at least have spurts of him being, pretty solid tee to green. Does he have the putter to run hots? Again, the form has been pretty terrible. There's a reason he's 6,400, but that's a guy that is typically up into the higher range, at least at times. So he pops a little bit down here. I mean, this is a rough thing. It's like you said, it matters because we're going to need, especially if we're jamming in Rahm and we're trying to do even some Rahm Cantleys, we're going to need some of these guys down here. Pat Perez is a guy that's won here before. Again, a dude that I'd rather hang out with than roster in DFS. We have Chesson Hadley, who at times has been okay. Richie Werenski will pop up at the most random event and be decent. But again, there's nothing here statistically that makes you feel that you can lean on anything actionable to how these guys have played either towards the tail end of last season or anything that we've seen for them in the swing season. Because most of these guys have not played in Hawaii.
Yeah, what has Werenski been up to? I just looked at Austin Cook to see how he's been doing. Not well is the answer. Werenski, I mean, the last time he finished inside the top 20 was the Arnold Palmer Invitational in 2021. That's the one that Bryson won. I feel like he was chipping everything in that week.
I think he was in like the final group too in that one. Like you just like, what the hell are we doing with Richie Werenski? How about Nate Lashley? Can we go back to the what happened there with the putter last week? Tee to green was immaculate, but it's rough. I mean, it brought back thoughts of, was it Pebble Beach?
Oh yeah.
Last year. Oh man, that was
Beach.
Tough to watch.
That was a big ticket too. If he had just, at least he had enough goodwill to come inside the top 5 and cashes each way. But I really thought that he was going to win. Did not expect him to get stuck in that bunker on the par 3.
Yeah, neither did he. He was he was not very happy, and the camera crews caught him at the wrong time. That's for sure. Which, I can't imagine how I would react in that moment too. So no judgment on Nate Lashley, but again, you like to see ball striking like that. We're looking for anything here. How about Davis Riley? Nice little top 20 last week. Again, if he can hit greens in regulation, he's probably a cut maker. I just don't know if he has the upside. But again, like the last few months have not been great outside of last week, Sony.
Well, Davis Riley, I mean, I have such a sort of misconception about like what kind of player he actually is. Because in my mind, he's sort of like Denny McCarthy, that if he gets the putter rolling, it's like, 8 strokes gain putting. Like that's the type of guy that he's going to be. And it hasn't quite manifested itself on the PGA Tour so far. Like he's only cracked 4 strokes gain putting twice, but he's generally in the positives. The approach is pretty good. I mean, the ball striking has been really good from him over his at least past 3 starts. He was 7th in Bermuda, 29th. It's like one good week on, one. So he's like 7th miscut, 29th miscut, 20th, probably a miscut this week. But the ball striking's been really good. He can't chip to save his life. The issue here is that the greenside bunkers are super tough. But if you can stay out of the greenside bunkers, chipping is super easy. So maybe that swings back to his favor because I have no idea how he is on sand saves. Not good per the numbers would be the answer to that. Like, would you rather play Riley or Chad Ramey?
Ramey's another guy that's just kind of like I guess he's a cheaper Buckley this week. We just have a guy that had, I guess, a nice little run in the Corn Ferry to end the year. And again, the swing season was kind of meh, but like, again, maybe whoever's lower owned and cheaper. So I probably Davis Riley, just because again, like, I don't know, the distance here might help where he can maybe get himself some shorter irons in his hands and maybe hit those greens in reg. Just keep him off of, the approach or, the around the green stuff, which gives him nightmares because he's red everywhere around the green. But again, approach has been pretty decent. Putting can be okay, but he can bomb it off the tee and is pretty accurate too. So probably Riley for me.
Any interest in this guy that I was tracking because he was on like one of the featured groups for whatever reason on Sunday was Justin Lower, who I think he gained almost 5 strokes on approach last week and lost everywhere else. -4 off the tee, -5 putting, but now +5 on approach. It's always a nice indicator. But he's never gained strokes in his career putting on the PGA. No, once at the 2017 Wells Fargo, 0.4. But like the guy is a disaster with the putter. I just thought he was really interesting, and now he's like not reasonably priced. Dylan Wu actually did have a good week last week, kind of across the board.
Yeah.
And he's made 3 consecutive cuts since the U.S. Open. He's made 5 of 6. No real high finishes, but the approach game is always pretty good.
Always pretty good. Same thing with Luke Donald, who still hits,
Oh God.
decent approach. Oh, well, I know. I mean, what are we dealing with here? I mean, we're looking in the 6Ks. you're talking about Justin Lower, who's like missing cuts on the Corn Ferry all year last year. This is what we're dealing with. But like, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to roster Luke Donald, but again, we're kind of grasping at straws down here with some of these guys. How about Brandon Hagee? Like, it's shown upside a little bit at times. I had a solo second last year, the Honda first round leader here last year, I believe. Again, I think that was Nicholas, but again, we've at least seen it at times for him. He's 6,200. He's probably pretty interesting.
I can get behind Brandon Hagee because he's $6,200, and we know that he has enough upside if you hit the right week that he can make a lot of those lineups work, where the rest of your Rom lineups or Cantlay lineups or double up lineups don't look as horrible in the middle. Like the meat of that lineup isn't an absolute disaster. Like you can have some like premium turkey. Like you're not going to get up to like nice steak or some like, prime rib, anything like that. But like, you're not going to have like deli meat turkey. You're going to have some like nicer, fresh turkey with your, Lucas Glovers of the world, that type of player, rather than having your high 68 type players. So I can see it. I don't know how much I want it. The other guys I was looking like Paul Barjon ended up with a really nice ball striking week. Could not chip to save his life. Dewey Vanderwall, I think I just like his name. There's no real reason to play him. And 4chan, Chan Kim. Eventually he's going to make a putt on the PGA Tour. I'm feeling it for him at some point.
Oh, this used to be back in the day. I think back when it was the Bob Hope, when it was a 5-round event. This was like the Bill Haas Open forever, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to step on toes because I know that's he's a popular play for one of your guests often. But Bill Haas, if we want to dial up a 40-year-old Bill Haas this week, I think. Well, I don't, but again, it was worth looking at course history and being like, damn, Bill Haas used to like just roll out of bed in T5 here.
Yeah, man, listen, Mark Wilson's won this event too. Maybe we could play him in down at 6,000. Now, I think we've exhausted the list of names. I got some culling to do on this matter when it comes down to picking the guys that I actually want to go with. But let's fill out a play the best plays lineup on DraftKings this week to see what that can go with. Where do you think the people start their lineups? Just auto click ROM?
Auto click ROM. Yeah, I think so. I think, we can get into, like we did. I think the Cantlay thing is very interesting, but I think ROM definitely soaks it up. So maybe you see not significantly lower owned Cantlay, because I think people can start there too. But again, there's just such little difference between ROM and Cantlay that I think you spend the 400 just to lock in ROM.
So I got the first 4 in this lineup: ROM, Answer, Glover, Swafford. I think those are the top 4, like the auto clicks. And now you still have 7,600 left.
All right, 76. What do you think? We're going to have Michael Thompson in there too, right? You said?
Yeah, I think that we can do that. So we go with Michael Thompson. Who's the other guy popularity-wise? Let's see here, from in the lower 7s. Because if we can do that, then we can get up to like Hadwin or List or one of those guys who's also going to be pretty popular, I think. Or even Chris Kirk, for that matter.
Yeah,
lower 7s. People are digging Svensson and Hayden Buckley. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Those probably are the two. Svensson, T7 last week, putted well, great on approach. Yeah, I mean, I think he probably carries some ownership. Again, $200 savings on Buckley, which I think kind of can matter in a spot like this where you're looking to maybe move up into a higher range of the upper 7. So I think we can go with Svensson.
Now let's see. If we go Thompson, Michael Thompson. Hello, Mr. Thompson. Then we can go, that doesn't get us up to Knox or Kirk, who I think could both be there. So if we go Buckley, Hayden Buckley at 72, that gives us 8,000, meaning we can take Luke List if we want to, or we can go to like Hadwin or Kirk.
We want Luke List.
All right, so ROM, Answer, Glover, Swafford, Buckley, Luke List. $0 remaining in that lineup too, so it's good.
It's good. Then you feel good about it. You log out. And you just wait till Sunday night. You wait for the money to come in. You get the email, and you're good to go.
All right, there it is. That's the best plays lineup. Last guy that we never brought up the entire time. And I just make this because it's California. Cameron Champ.
Well, yeah, I mean, you haven't seen him for a while. Didn't play in the TOC because of COVID. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I bought into Cam Champ a little bit at the start of last year because I thought the irons were really good, or at least encouraging. We saw at the Masters, the weird November Masters and some stuff. So, I mean, yeah, you can make a case for him in California. We should probably, if we're going to be attacking him and we want to buy low on Cam Champ, this would be the spot to start doing it here over the next couple of weeks. Probably want to see it a little bit first. But again, I'd rather get him maybe on a spot where I think that distance is going to matter a little bit more. We just don't know that it matters here because you look at kind of who wins here. Sometimes it matters absolutely 0. when you look at the top of the leaderboard. But again, he's probably not going to be owned because of we haven't seen him yet. And some of those guys I think probably are crossed off the list to start most lineup builds this week.
I think that he is a very interesting pivot play this week because, like you mentioned, no one is going to play him. He's in a range around guys that are going to be very highly owned. And you have someone he's almost like Siwoo in a lot of ways. He's the Ricky Bobby. He's like first or last. That you can get paid so much if you're right on champ. And you don't, even if you play 6 lineups and you play him in 2 or 1, like you're so much over the field that I think that I'm going to end up throwing him in my player pool.
Yeah, he didn't even really play in the swing season either. So yeah, I mean, we have nothing to go off of. Again, that doesn't really matter here. And that's kind of a spot where, to your point, he is kind of right around a bunch of dudes like we're talking about, like even a little bit ahead of him with List and Harmon and Hadwin with all the ownership and history here. And then the, Kirk, Knox, Woodland tier just below him. So yeah, I mean, he will probably be sub 5. So yeah, I mean, if he hits, you were obviously in a good spot and you can eat some of that ROM chalk and feel pretty good about it.
Let's see. Right now, the projected ownership on Cameron Champ is 0.3%. No, sorry, 1.7%. Same as Brendan Todd.
Yeah, so you play Champ over Todd every day. Like, what is Brandon Todd, a 5-6 condom play? Like, there's just no upside on Brandon Todd whatsoever. That's not fun. It's not fun to watch. Like, Champ, you feel good about. That's an exciting guy, young kid. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer.
Right, that will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Remember to play in the Listeners League. Link is available in the description. Smash a like and give me your 2 favorite guys in the $6,000 region. Ryan, thank you for coming on. I think you've earned, right or wrong this week, you've earned another appearance on the Pat Mayo Experience. But tell everyone where they can find you on a week-to-week basis. I
appreciate it, Pat. We're dealing with my technology issues at times too. So excited. We have a new venture coming out. It's betspurtsgolf.com. You should be able to head over there today and be able to sign up for a newsletter, get some information on when we go live there. We're going to have some content. We're going to have some tools, lots of cool stuff. We still have golf going on over at 4for4. We just launched our 2022 year subscription for the betting sub. It's going to get you basically everything from now until the end of next February. So it's going to basically get you 13 months, football, NBA, golf, all sorts of stuff. So also check out @BetSpurtsGolf on Twitter.
Right. You can follow me at the PME on Twitter. Subscribe to the newsletter. That's where I'll be releasing my finalized bets, DraftKings ownership projections. Well, guesses from me. They're not really projections for the week of who is going to be the most popular, plus some additional notes. And if you're looking for the cheat sheet, it will be up on DKNation.com. Thank you all for watching. Smash the like on the way out. I'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!